Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of FitSis, the podcast that's all about the Muslima in the arena. Each week, I profile professional female Muslim athletes, find out what makes them tick, what motivates them and inspires them, and how they deal with challenges, all in the hopes of getting you to move more, inshallah. And this week, I chat to professional MMA fighter Iman Al-Mudhaf. She is a Kuwaiti-born athlete who now resides in London. I'm super excited for this one. Walaikum. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to have you today.
Salam, thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, it is. It's super exciting. And I think, you're so many things. You're undefeated. You're from Kuwait, which I think is like very unexpected for a female hijabi MMA fighter, right? So maybe let's start there. Let's start at the beginning. How did you end up being a professional MMA fighter?
So I did sports all my life. I always loved, staying out to doing different kinds of sports. When I was a teenager, about 15, 16, I started watching these, kung fu movies and all of these movies. It was coming up at the time. And I just loved the martial arts. It just looks loads of fun, there's loads of contact. I always loved contacts in sports,
Yeah.
But things were different back then. In Kuwait, it was hard to find gyms that would train girls in martial arts. So we started looking around, my mom would take me and we'd go in different gyms and ask if we could train. And nobody would take us in. They would all be like, no, sorry, we don't train girls. We only had taekwondo as an option, and that's not what I wanted to do, and I wanted real fighting, So about maybe a year later, there was a gym that opened up that accepted girls. It was like a full contact karate, that Kyokushin. Don't know if you heard of it before.
Yeah.
But so I started doing it, and I loved it. I did a few competitions, I did well, and then that gym closed down because they weren't enough people. So after that, my coach spoke to this Muay Thai coach that had it was the best Muay Thai gym in the country, and she convinced him to let me in and train with the guys, and I did, I did that for a few years until I moved to the UK, and that's when I started MMA, because we didn't have really MMA back in Kuwait,
Okay, so your MMA career essentially started in the UK, where obviously there are more gyms, there are more women to compete against. So your mom was always open to you being in that space, because it kind of shatters the stereotypes that you have around traditional Arab families and how they kind of what they see for them. So she was always cool with it.
So they weren't surprised that I liked sports, and I was a little bit, let's say, I don't know, how tempered is that the word? All my life, So they weren't really entirely surprised, but obviously it's not the best thing to have your daughter, especially your daughter, go and get hit in the head and hit other people. It's not the obviously ideal sport you want your daughter to be in. So they weren't, I guess, very enthusiastic about it at the start. But I'm the type of person, it's like if I saw something and I believed in it, I don't really. I'm just gonna go and do it. You're gonna take your time until you convince. Yeah, it's very hard to change my mind. Once I'm set on to do something. So they came along, but it took some time, obviously. But they're understanding now. It's normal.
That's amazing. When you were fighting or training Muay Thai at home in Kuwait, did you start fighting then? Obviously, the karate is full contact, and I haven't done that kind of karate, but I have this kind of idea that karate is not as real as Muay Thai, MMA, right? So would you say that Muay Thai was your first real, in terms of what you use in MMA now, and did you fight as a Muay Thai fighter first?
Yes, of course, because in the full contact karate you can't punch people in the face. It's like basically without bare knuckle, but just to the body and kicks. It's it was hard on the body, yes, but there's no punching in the face, and I always wanted more. I wanted something more real, you know. And it actually started when I did my last competition in karate, and I got disqualified because I punched a girl in the face. So you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, this is a sign.
I loved it, I guess, Yeah, I did. It was really hard to find competition in the region, so you need to travel. Obviously, at that time, it was hard for me to travel. I did one Muay Thai fight in Kuwait, and I won that. And then I did another one in Malaysia. We're doing it as a team, like we're doing a training camp there, and I fought there as well. And I did well as well. So it was just 2 fights.
Okay, amazing. And then you packed up and you moved to England, to the UK, and started.
I came here to study, and obviously it was a chance for me to continue training and find like higher level training as well. So let me just I went to a gym here, and I saw I was actually going to the gym to check out the Muay Thai training, and I was before the Muay Thai class there was a boxing class, and my coach, who's my coach until today, because he's a boxing coach as well, so he's holding the boxing class. And I just watched the training. I was like, yeah, I definitely want to train with this guy. He knows what he's doing. So that's how I started, yeah.
So then MMA, how was the transition from Muay Thai and just stand up to the MMA space? And then did you start in the amateur space or go directly into pros? What was that journey like?
I started with amateurs. So obviously I had zero grappling at the time. But my coach is obviously he has a heavy grappling background because he used to be a sambo fighter. So we worked on grappling, and a few months after I started MMA, I think it was like 3-4 months. I heard there was an amateur competition. I wanted to in London. I wanted to ask my coach, "Would you think do you think I can join the tournament?" And he said, "If you want, we can speak to them." And I did my first amateur fight. About 3-4 months after I started.
That's amazing. And that was it for you? Like the bug.
Sorry?
And that was it for you? After your first fight, you knew this was what you wanted?
Oh yeah, definitely. It wasn't like I had probably, like, if you watch the fight, it was when I watch it back, I'm like, it's just I had zero grappling. It was just me going there, kickboxing, but I just I loved it. It was different, it was different intensity and all it just feels like it's real,
It's always crazy looking back at that first amateur fight. For me, for me it's the opposite. I've got the grappling but no striking. So I look back at like my first amateur fight or two, and I'm like the stance and where the hands are and everything is just like, oh god, it's terrible.
It's not pretty to look at your earlier fights, is it?
But also good, right? Mashallah, to like see how far you've come and all of that. So now, fast forward, how many years has it been for you?
The first amateur fight, I think it was like 2018, I think.
Okay.
So don't know, do them how much?
Yeah, like six years. Yeah,
probably.
Amazing. So now fast forward, and you are here as an undefeated professional fighter. Is this what you had thought? If I had asked you in 2018, like, is this where you think your life is going to be in 2025? Would you have thought you'd be here?
No way. No. I mean, I always, since I was a kid, I always thought, I always like wanted to be kind of an athlete. I didn't know what sport. I loved sports, and I wanted to be my kind of full-time job. But I thought it was the dream that's never going to happen. It's like impossible.
Yeah. So what has the professional journey been like for you?
So I had 2 amateur fights, and then it was during COVID. I think it was like 2021. So probably during COVID is just ending, and I was back home in Kuwait, and I think the only country open at the time was UAE. It was Dubai, basically. So I had a call from my coach at the time back home, and he said there's a professional fight. If you want to do you want to do like your professional debut in the UAE Warriors? It was in about a month's time or something. And I spoke to my coach here. He's like, if you feel good, just go ahead. Why not? So I just took it. I went to Dubai, did a camp about 3 weeks in a gym there, and then and had my fight in Abu Dhabi.
Amazing. And I think for us here in South Africa, UAE Warriors is like, it's a prestigious, maybe it's slightly different if you're in the region, but sitting from here, it's a very prestigious event. It's a stepping stone to your bigger organizations, whether that's Bellator or PFL or UFC. So how was that experience on that big stage, first fight? After that, were you like, this is what I'm doing with my life, I'm done now?
Yeah, there was it was the best feeling in the world. You know, I love the adrenaline you get before the fight. I love being in the cage. I love fighting. You know, it's like when I'm there, it's like it feels like home. It's a place where I want to be. You know, I enjoy it, and I enjoy having the crowd, and I enjoy showing my skills. So definitely, yeah. After that fight, I knew I couldn't wait to get back in there again.
And so we've chatted quite a bit on Instagram around like being a Muslim woman in the sport, being a hijabi in the sport, and kind of sometimes the difficulties of getting fights, that kind of thing. I imagine that an organization like UAE Warriors wouldn't have an issue with it because it's in that region where it would be kind of the done thing compared to what I would think would be maybe challenges in the UK, right? Yeah. Did you have difficulty getting the fight or difficulty passing your wardrobe? What was your journey like around that?
So difficulty finding fights, this is like, I think, the biggest challenge in my career ever since I started. But fighting with the hijab, I think the hardest thing, or the hardest time was my first amateur fight, because I don't think it was ever done before, especially not in the UK, you know. And it was something I totally understand, because it's something new. There's something they never had to deal with before, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to find the right attire, obviously, to convince them to be able to do the fight. So what I did is I think I went on Amazon or something and tried to find one of those kind of rash guards that has the cap attached to it. And I found one. It was a bit strange looking one, but it did the job. And I just fixed it a little bit, put something around the edges of the face so it would hold in place. And I contacted them, and we kept going back and forth. You know, at first they said, no, we can't do this. You know, it's like a safety or regulations thing. It was a little bit kind of disappointed at the start, but we kept going back and forth. And in the end, they agreed. And I think this was the hardest one. After that, they saw my footage of me fighting in it. They had no problems. So I didn't really face loads of problems after that. Even when I was offered the Bellator fight, I was a little bit surprised, because I kept telling them that I have to wear this, and I have to wear leggings under my shorts, and because sometimes I'm not sure if they get me. You know what I mean? I had to. Yeah. So they said there was no problem, and I didn't have a problem since then. So.
The Bellator fight really surprised me as well. Firstly, amazing achievement, and I know that no one is more sad about it than you, but I was so sad when it didn't actually happen. But like, mashallah, looking at your gear and those photos, like, they really stepped up in terms of making sure that it was catered for in the right way, in a way that I haven't seen another organization do. So I thought that was really amazing and progressive to see that that MMA was moving in that direction. And when your fight was booked, I was undecided about whether I was going to fight MMA in hijab again. I had recently gone into hijab, had the boxing fight, and had so much fight around being able to wear the hijab, because it hadn't been done in South Africa before. Same thing like you, they were worried about safety regulations, but not my safety regulations. They were my opponent's safety regulations. And I'm thinking, like, what is my hijab going to, like, what do you think is going to happen? So it's interesting that something hasn't been dealt with before, how people are so confused about it. And then when I saw Bellator step up the way they did in terms of, being okay with the gear, and it was really well put together, I was like, amazing. MMA is moving in the right direction. So that was really exciting. Yeah. It would have been more exciting if the fight happened, for sure.
Yeah, I know. It was a big disappointment, but alhamdulillah, it's khira. It's like God's plan, Hopefully something's gonna happen soon. So let's see.
Inshallah. So just back to the hijab for a minute. So the rash guard that you wear, that's submission apparel. Is that the first one that you had, or did you have something made before that?
So, like I told you, the first fight, it was something I just made up quickly before the fight. Okay. As soon as I won that fight, the Submission Apparel's company contacted me, and they said, if you're interested, we want to sponsor you with the gear and be one of the ambassadors of the brand. And honestly, they've been amazing. I love the rash guard. I use it up until my last fight. And yeah, it works perfect. It's amazing. It never, didn't bother me one bit in the fight, in any fight.
Amazing. Because I know we chatted about that and you told me about them when I reached out to you initially. And then you mentioned that you put like a non-slip grip underneath.
Yeah, that's
so that inspired me. Yeah. And that inspired me to make my own, because I can't get submission apparel here. I've reached out to it, just it doesn't work. So I went through the process of actually making something like that for myself with that slip grip, you know, under stuff. And it makes such a difference. At one point, I think I might have told you, but at one point I was sewing my hijab to my braids to make sure it doesn't come off.
Wow.
I had like wig tape underneath, like I was doing all these crazy things just to try and make sure, because would you agree that it's like one of the biggest fears is having it come off in the fight? And maybe it's not even about exposing yourself, although that is a fear, but it's the attention, like knowing that MMA is such a dangerous sport, and if your attention slips for a moment because you're thinking about your hijab or your top or whatever, that's the end of the fight for you.
100%, yeah. It just takes like one blink or something, and it can elbow across your face and it's done, you know? So,
yeah. And have you ever had an experience like that you struggled to get through in a fight situation or in training even?
With the hijab, you mean?
Yeah, with the hijab.
No, in a fight, thankfully, up until now, it's always been with the way I, you know, what I did around the hijab and with the submission apparel hijab, it's been perfect, to be honest. I had no problems whatsoever. In training, yeah, sometimes, but in training, it's different. You know, your training partners understand. Plus, we're not really going to like knock out each other anyway, you know. So
yeah. And would you say, you know, training as a professional fighter, as a female, amongst potentially other female fighters, are things different for you as a female Muslim, a hijabi? Like, is your routine different? Is your kind of the process that you have to go through? Like, tell us a little bit of you know, what that's like for you as a pro athlete, but also as a Muslim woman.
To be honest, living in London is such a multicultural city, and there's loads of Muslims here. You can, you know, you can't go in a bus or in a train and there's not at least one more hijabi girl, you know, or a Muslim man in the train, you know. So everybody's very understanding. I never really had any issues going to gyms with my hijab or training with, you know, whether it's grappling, striking. No one really ever gave me a comment on it or had any problems with it. So I think I'm lucky when it comes to this. So, and obviously the same back home because it's very normal, you know. Yeah. So
And so your hijab journey, was that something that, you know, were you like always in hijab? Were you in hijab as long as you've been competing, or what was that journey like for you?
So I come from kind of conservative background, and you know, so we had, ever since I was young, like I don't remember what age, but I was young when I started wearing a hijab, and it was just always a part of my life, you know. And back home, it's not a thing that really holds you back, you know. For us, it's normal. Like girls do all sorts of sports, you know, live their lives, do whatever, and they wear a hijab. It's not really an obstacle in any way, you know, in any part of your life, really. Like I didn't understand this up until I moved to the West. I think that people. I don't know, that I see it as an obstacle sometimes of some women, or, you know, people might look at you differently, or kind of, I don't know, judge you in a way, I guess. But because I grew up in Kuwait, maybe it was a bit easier for me, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the different, just the different experience based on, you know, it being the norm in your culture, in your society, because definitely Muslim women in the West who choose to make the decision to wear the hijab can find it as an obstacle. And definitely I've discovered in the sporting space or even in the fitness space, if you were, you know, once a fit person, not necessarily a professional fighter, but just somebody that trained a lot, and you start wearing the hijab, you find that either it's because the body is more covered and so it's less of a priority, or it's the feeling of shame maybe of walking into a public space in the hijab. But I certainly find with a lot of the Muslim women that I train that once they go into hijab, they see this as an obstacle to, continue their fitness journey, whatever that looks like. So it's amazing to hear that for you, that wasn't even something that, crossed your mind.
Yeah. It's maybe I got used to it, I guess. I wore it all my life, and
that's great.
I just got used to it. I guess maybe it's different. Yeah, it's a different experience, I think.
I think for me, the biggest shift was laundry. So, like when you're not in hijab and you're not wearing conservative clothing, it's a sports bra and shorts. So it's very few things to wash. And now I'm washing a lot of clothes all the time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
The most question I would get in the summers, like, don't you get hot? I'm like, yeah. What do you think? Of course I do. That's the point. Obviously, it's not supposed to be easy. But
it's interesting.
It's okay.
Yeah. So you're in a pretty cold climate at the moment for your experience, right?
Yeah. It's too cold for me. Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting. So it's summer here in South Africa at the moment, and I get asked obviously that question a lot. But I mean, it'll be 35 degrees, and I can guarantee you that everyone is hot. So that's my answer is like, I'm hot. Aren't you hot? Like, we're all hot today. But there's this idea that these extra layers of clothing is just throwing you off completely. So a question around weigh-ins specifically. Those are traditionally done. And maybe in UAE Warriors, it would be different or more accommodating. But weigh-ins are traditionally done in as little clothes as possible so you can make the weight in front of a public audience of some kind. How have you navigated that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So first of all, the person that's going to help me with the weight, that was an issue to start with. But thankfully, I have a training partner here in the UK. Her name's Kate. Shout out. She's amazing. So my last 3 fights, she travels with me, and she helps me with the fight week and as well as making the weight. And you really need someone there, especially the last kilos of when you try to lose the water weight. And it's good to have a female around, obviously. So when I fought in the UAE, they probably a bit more understanding, but the thing is it was not like everybody's, how do you say, it's not like a stage or anything when you do the weigh-ins. You just walk into a room, there's a couple of officials there, and they would check your weight. So what we did is that we went to the room, we asked them if we could just have one person instead of a whole group of men. And my friend, we have like a giant kind of sheet, she just hold it up and I stand in front of it, and then the scale of the weight shows behind. You can move sorry, my English is not my first language, sometimes I just don't remember the words. With the numbers, the thing with the numbers, so you can move it around. Not yet. So you stand on the scale and then it attaches to kind of a wire with where the numbers
with the screen.
With the screen, so they move it behind me, and he can check the weight, and that worked out for us last time, the last few times. And the same with Bellator. Honestly, I was very surprised of how understanding they were, and it wasn't even an event in the Middle East. It was here in the UK. Everyone was just so helpful and nice and understanding, and so it was the same with Bellator as well. So it worked out well.
It's amazing to hear that, and I think it's so interesting that a sport like MMA, obviously it's been a sport that is essentially the forerunner in combat sports, the one that's developing the fastest. But if you think about, it feels like just yesterday, I don't know how long you've been watching MMA for, but it feels like just yesterday that Dana White was like, there won't be any woman in the UFC ever. And then you fast forward 11 years, 12 years, whatever it is, and here we are with women headlining events. Now, looking at other organizations where you've got hijabi fighters. So it's like, initially, I think a lot of women fighting was a sex appeal thing. So you would get a certain amount of interest based on your looks, and that's how you would land fights. And so you would have the more attractive MMA fighters getting ahead of maybe somebody who showed less skin or was a little bit more like a tomboy. And it's beautiful to see that this is shifting now, and that it's not about, if you compare it to bare knuckle
for example, where bare knuckle is all about sex appeal. So it would never happen. You'll never find a hijabi fighter as a bare knuckle fighter. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think it is about MMA specifically that it has been so open to welcoming women in? Because I feel like maybe I'm open to it now, where I'm seeing it everywhere, but it really seems like Muslim women and women in hijab is growing in the MMA space very fast.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because I remember when I used to do Muay Thai and I had a friend. She's from the UK and she was like, "Don't you like? Would you ever?" It was like around the Ronda Rousey time when she started fighting in the UFC. Like, would you ever think that you fight MMA one day? I was like, I was in no way, you know. I wear a hijab first of all. That's never gonna happen. I can barely fight in Muay Thai with a hijab, you know. I was having problems fighting fights, and now you say MMA, that's never gonna happen, you know. And look, you know, see how it is today. It's crazy. I think it might be a part of it might be of the expansion in the Middle East that helped as well, because they are more open to different cultures. Because there were a couple of women that didn't wear her hijab from the Gulf. I think it was Saudi, but she still wants to be covered. You know, she doesn't want to wear just the bra and the shorts. You know.
Yeah.
And they accommodated for that as well, with special gear for PFL. And I think that was amazing because at the end of the day, you know, sports is about skill. It's about showing, you know, good skills, sportsmanship as well, obviously. And yeah, I think it's great, honestly. I think it's what sports should be all about, I think. Performance.
So 100%. So on that note, do you feel like there is more pressure on you because you are not selling yourself based on sex appeal? Do you feel more pressure to showcase high skill or to showcase, you know, your worth in your skills because you can't fall back on, you know, what the West would deem sexuality?
Not really. I never think of it as that in that way. You know, I always have high pressure for myself because I like to perform. I like to outperform every fight. You know, and especially after all the disappointments I always have of getting fights cancelled or not being able to find fights. So when I do get a fight, I get this kind of, you know, fire to take the revenge of all these camps that went, you know, that didn't get to fight, you know. So yeah, I don't, honestly, I never think of it that way, you know.
I think it's interesting. It's probably because you've been in hijab forever, you don't know a different way. Yeah. But for me, I found for sure, like I fought my first three MMA fights as a pro without hijab. And then I went into hijab, and that was a lot. I think also just all the footage also that was out there of me without hijab, and now coming into that was a lot to deal with. But then being like a pretty fighter, you can rely on that a little bit. And so now putting the hijab on, I was like, oh crap, like my skills is all they're going to see. They're not going to see anything else. And on one hand, it's liberating. But on the other hand, it's a little scary too, because now it's like, this needs to be good because there's nothing else to look at, which was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it's very interesting. It's a very different experience, you know, from your side, but, I bet it must be very hard, honestly, especially, I mean, not even being like wearing the hijab, just being a Muslim in the West must be hard by itself, you know. When I see some of my friends here, I think sometimes you're lucky to be, you know, like it's always easier to be born a Muslim, I guess, you know. It's not the same struggle, but the reward is different, inshallah, as well, you know.
Inshallah.
Struggle as you have, you know, get more reward.
So what is next for you? Obviously, Bellator was there and then it wasn't there. Are they trying to source another fight for you? Is that the plan? Do you have something coming up?
I don't have anything solid right now. I'm waiting for them because I don't think they're going to have any shows before April or May. They're going to take now. They had the show, I think, was yesterday, and they're going to have kind of a gap to sort things out. So I'm waiting to hear back from them, and you know, hoping to get fights soon after Ramadan.
Yeah. So Ramadan, it's a good topic. How do you navigate? How do you navigate that? And I need to say that I have so many Muslim clients that when it's Ramadan, they want to tell you. It's different. It's not their profession, but they want to tell you, halas, like not happening. I'll see you after Eid, like no training. I can't fast and train. And then for professional athletes, like that's not an option. You still need to, you can't lose everything, even though I'm sure you'll scale back. And then I hear different things where some, some fighters prefer to not take on fights close to Ramadan or in Ramadan. Others want to enjoy, the heightened spirituality and what that feels like for. So everyone's got a different way of navigating. What is yours?
Yeah. So in Ramadan, usually every year I try to go back home to spend a month with my family, in Kuwait, and so I'm gonna go this year as well. So over there, obviously, because almost everyone is fasting, so we're kind of tailoring the training there as well. So what we do is I'd have a training session before I break my fast, which is kind of low to medium intensity, like more technical. And then I'd have the harder session. Let's say if I'm like wrestling hard or grappling, is usually after I break my fast, like a couple hours after I break my fast. And in general, yes, the training in Ramadan is a bit scaled down, obviously. So I do have 2 training sessions, but it's not as hard as when I'm here.
Mm. And so interesting, you're training after you've broken your fast, so that's going to be quite a late session, depending on what time of the year it is.
Yeah. In Ramadan, we obviously my sleep schedule changes, So what I do is I think so every year obviously changes, but I think this year we break our fast around 6 p.m., 6:30, so it's not that late. So I'd have a training session before that, and maybe around. So I'd eat something light afterwards, and I'd have my next session around 9:30.
Okay, so it's late, but I know that in the Middle East,
it is. Yeah.
There's no sleep.
I sleep late. Yeah. So after that, I come back, eat, and then sleep for a couple hours before Fajr,
Yeah. So I mean, when I was in Egypt earlier last year, I couldn't believe how different the timing is. So the guys were saying, no, we stay awake till Fajr, we pray Fajr, we sleep the rest of the day. So by 12 o'clock, I was like, oh my God, I can't stay awake. So I imagine everything just accommodates better for you when you're there compared to being in London.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everybody's up in Ramadan. It's like if you walk in the streets in any Arab country, or maybe 2 a.m., you feel like it's in the afternoon, So everybody's out, everything's open. It's
completely different, right? From where you are now.
In Arab country. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so there are some fighters that would choose to fight in Ramadan or very close, to like just after, like not even having a full camp outside of Ramadan. What's your take on that? What's your ideal time frame around Ramadan for a fight?
I'd never fight in Ramadan. Because first of all, I'm not gonna have any day to break my fast to fight, and you're not going to be in your best condition, even if you I don't know, fight at night, or I don't think it's the best or the smartest thing, at least for me,
Yep.
I'm not going to be at my full potential for sure.
And how soon after Ramadan would you feel comfortable? Would you want a full camp, like 4 or 5 weeks? What would be the ideal? Yeah, me too.
That's what I think. That's what my coach thinks as well. At least have I don't know, like a good ideally have a good 6 weeks after Ramadan to, for your body to get back to normal, because you need time to adjust even after Ramadan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even if you've eaten clean, which as athletes is a given, but it's always a little tough in Ramadan. But even if you've eaten clean and you've trained, there's still muscle loss, because you're not eating the calories at the same time and at the same quantity. All of that is different. So for me, I feel the same. I feel like there needs, expecting to perform anything sooner than 5 or 6 weeks after Eid is just too much to expect. But everyone is different. I know of people that have enjoyed having a Ramadan camp or fighting. Nobody I know wants to fight in Ramadan, but having a camp in Ramadan for some works for them. So if we take that a step back and we speak about just average fitness people who are fasting and training, on the internet, there's a lot of different information about when the ideal time is to train. And some people say between Asr and Maghrib is the best time. Others will say, just after Fajr. What, if you weren't a professional athlete or with your kind of friends, who are training but aren't professional athletes, what do you think works at best and why?
I think it depends, obviously, if the day is long or not. Because I think sometimes in the Middle East we don't have a big change. Because the maximum, I think, in the longest day in the summer, it's going to be like 7:15 p.m. where the Maghrib is, But in the UK, let's say, it could go to like 9:30, quarter to 10 p.m. Crazy. So obviously you have to train before you break your fast if you want to train. I would say ideally be as close to Maghrib time as possible, just for dehydration, especially if you're not used to doing high intensity exercise when you're fasting. And just make sure you rehydrate after you break your fast. Or if the day is shorter, it's maybe better to have a light kind of iftar and then do your workout after that, and then you have your big meal, which is even healthier for your digestive system, not to have like a massive meal at iftar,
Yeah,
we all done
for
that
sure.
mistake, I think, before.
Yeah.
It's not a great
and then
idea.
you have big plans for what you're gonna do after iftar, and then you eat something heavy and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What are your so you go home for Ramadan, which obviously allows you to eat food from home, which is going to be very different to what you're eating in London. So what are your kind of go-tos or things that you miss the most?
I miss cooking. I miss, home-cooked meals, like proper home-cooked meals, not what I cook, over here.
Yeah. So there's nothing, what is specific? Tell me some of this local food that's your favorite. You'll have to describe it because I probably won't know, but.
Yeah, I'll try my best. Because in Ramadan we have special dishes that we only do in Ramadan. So these ones I love. And we have as well just my favorite Kuwaiti dishes, like meat and rice. So it's lamb meat with rice. It's very basic, but it's very good as well. And the desserts my sisters make, after iftar, this is perfect as well. I can't wait for that.
I love that. Yeah, there's nothing like home cooked food, especially when you've been when you've been away from it. So just kind of in wrapping up around just your perception of women and exercise. So for you, you've always been into sport. You've never felt that the hijab limits you in any way. I'm curious if that's the same for your siblings or for your female friends that are from Kuwait. But what I'm seeing is this kind of, and the reason that inspired this podcast is that there's this global trend of Muslim women that are moving away from being physically active, physically fit, physically strong. They're kind of just reside to the kitchen, and their purpose is to cook and to raise children. And we see as a ummah, we're getting physically weaker. And a big thing for me is wanting to inspire women to move more and to be, to encourage them to be fit. Is this something that you've seen in the Middle East as well? And what would your advice be around
that? I think it's everywhere now, this sedentary lifestyle, I guess, especially in the Middle East. Like if you compare my grandparents' generation to our generation, it's very different. Because it's a completely different lifestyle. Pre, I guess, oil, in the Gulf region as well. So it just people's lives became easier, and they became lazier, as well in general, men and women. But I think people a little bit now they're starting to have more. We have a lot of more female-only gyms as well. So a lot of women are more interested to go to these places, But I think it's very important. It doesn't matter even if you're a stay-at-home mother or if you have a full-time job. You need to take care of yourself, and part of taking care of yourself, you're gonna, spiritually and physically as well. I'm not sure how to translate that in English, but there's a saying in Islam. I think it's like your body has a right. You have to take care of your body.
The amana of your body, or the amana that you have to take care of your body.
Exactly. So it's also it's part of your duties, I guess.
And so then in closing, taking that a step further, what would your advice be to young Muslim women who would like to see themselves in a career in MMA?
I just if they it doesn't matter if it's MMA or any sport, you know, if they just have a goal and they should just focus on it, work hard, and it doesn't matter what circumstances are around you. You know, don't try to find the kind of the obstacles. Just try your best with whatever you have, you know, and work hard, and hopefully, inshallah, one day will pay off.
Iman, it's been amazing to be able to chat to you today. I've really loved this, and I cannot wait for that second shot at Bellator. I will be screaming at my TV when it happens, inshallah. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. I really appreciate it. And shukran so much, and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. A lovely chat. Inshallah, get to fight soon and get that 5th win, inshallah. Thank you very much, Samuel.